will be seated shortly, but before we start the meeting, he worked at the university for the subsequent 15 years, but then entered local politics as the Otara Papatoetoe board on there, which he became chair of, and then later he became the Auckland City Council representative, and of course most recently as a Green Party MP. So he has devoted his whole life to looking after other people, teaching other people in the first instance at the university, but working to help other people in the community. I would like to give you a quote, share with you a quote from him, which came from his maiden speech to Parliament. And because he's very focused on young people, and his thoughts on that were that it's our job to resource the people and organisations who will model the behaviour to them that we expect, but also not to give up on them and not to come with a saviour mentality. And I think that's quite an insightful comment from him and a useful one for us going forward. I note that flags on public buildings and government buildings throughout New Zealand will be flown at half-mast on Thursday to mark his passing. So thank you for that. And having said that, I will now hand over to the Reverend David Pulteney. Thank you very much. Who's from the Methodist Parish Superintendent. He'll open the meeting with a prayer for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you for the privilege of being here. My prayer is by a friend and colleague, Lynn Cardy, who is an Anglican priest working for a Presbyterian church, so I guess I've covered 3 of the bases. Blessed is a world where the weak are protected, none go hungry, and the benefits of life are shared. Blessed is a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect, and all know a safe place called home. Blessed is a world where animals and plants, the land and oceans are respected and cherished. Blessed is a world where peace is grounded in justice, justice is guided by love, and love is gifted unconditionally. Blessed is a world where with courage, kindness and grace we stand together and create this vision of hope. May it come to be. Amen.
Kia ora. Thank you. Moving on to public forum, we have one speaker for the public forum, Mr. Wayne Meddings. So, Mr. Meddings, you have 5 minutes to speak and 5 minutes for questions, and that will be marked by the clock that you see on the screens behind me. Thank you. Yes, you push the button to speak. If someone else speaks, that will override your button, so to speak again, you push your button again. You don't have to turn it off. The button only serves to turn it on. Sorry, we can't hear you.
Right.
We won't start till you're ready to go.
Okay, right. Let's roll this. Right, good morning. My name is Wayne Meddings and I'm the business owner of Cornerstone Inc. in George Street and the New Edinburgh Way. I'm here today as one of the really annoyed business owners who have been greatly affected by the roadworks on George Street. Before I begin, I would like to say that I don't disagree with roadworks needing to be done. It does need to be done. My annoyance is with many aspects of how it has been done. I also have no issue with any of the crew carrying out the roadworks. When they are on site, they're all working hard. My main concern is the amount of time it is taking to complete. Yes, I've heard many times that it's on schedule and on budget. Regardless, it's taking too long to complete. Today I will have a broad whinge about the project and what I think needs to be looked at. My main whinge will be at the end of this spiel, which is about the Santa Parade and how you guys pandered to that event. I will come back to this later. The CBD is a key area for business owners, residents and public to meet, shop, eat. It affects all people in the Dunedin area. So here are some things that I think you can do better moving forward, because quite obviously you're going to be going further down George Street and Princess Street. Working Monday, point number one, working Monday to Friday on a key area like the CBD is not good enough. Nothing grinds my gears as much as a business owner stepping into George Street on a Saturday, when I work on a Saturday, and Sunday, and there's no tools down for the weekend, yeah? Not good enough. Now, I've been told that businesses wanted this break in the weekend to get customers through the doors and people back into the streets. I've never been asked this. And why would we want that anyway? You've chopped off 2 blocks of George Street, plus the side street, so Hanover Street and St Andrew Street. There's nowhere for the public to park, so they avoid the area like the plague. Number 2, I think we missed an opportunity with the Meridian block, as there are no residents in that area. That should have run day shift, night shift, 7 days a week, 24/7. You should not have taken on 2 blocks at once. The Meridian block, New Edinburgh Way, St Andrew Street and Hanover Street, as it's choked the whole blooming city, not only pissing business owners off, but public too. In my block, the New Edinburgh Way, it's a bit different as we have residents and a motel. But I still think you got around this by working 2 shifts, Monday to Thursday, the other shift Friday to Sunday, 7 days a week, obviously not working nights. Stop pandering to outsiders, for example, the Santa Parade, or residents that don't actually live on George Street. The only people you should be listening to, really, is the businesses and residents in that block. So how's my business been affected? My business has been greatly affected by the roadworks. My business has been running at a loss for about a year now. I'm not here looking for compensation, but I just feel that businesses in general have been overlooked through this whole process. So I'm struggling to pay my bills. I'm always late on my bills now, which I've never been before. So not all of our clients are booked appointments in my studio. We rely on walk-in clients. Obviously, foot traffic through the New Edinburgh block has been down, and we hear over and over again that people are just avoiding the city. I've also lost staff. I've lost 2 staff to Wellington as my artists are subcontractors, so no work, no pay. So experienced artists are very hard to find, especially when you've got roadworks going on. So I've taken on 2 new apprentices, which go at a lower rate, which means less money rolling through the business, and me more time training people up. Okay, my main reason for being here today is the Santa Parade and how that was pandered to. I mean, how selfish for the Santa Parade committee to even ask to go down George Street while it's looking like a bomb site. Weeks before the Santa Parade, we had a meeting with all businesses in the New Edinburgh Way, headed by Jed and the Isaacs crew and Glenn Hazelton. The outcome, all businesses were dead against it. Not one business wanted that parade to go through. Now, a few days later, Glenn Hazelton and Isaacs paid a visit to my shop. They said that the mayor had pushed the Santa Parade through because he was worried about the bad press. But not to worry, because we would not lose 1 day of work, a blatant lie. Yep. I know you want to end this, yeah? So what happened? Every hole was filled in, yeah? It made smooth for the Santa Parade to come through, yeah? And then after the Santa Parade, every hole was dug back up again when you needed it to be dug up. The official line is still that we did not lose 1 day of work. So unfortunately, it feels like the businesses have not been considered at all. Perhaps the thinking behind this was, oh, if they shut down, well, other businesses will take their place when the roadworks are complete. Thank you for taking time today to listen to my concerns. My hope is that you will take this information on board and consider business owners more closely when planning and implementing future upgrades to the city. For the sake of businesses involved, there needs to be more urgency in getting the job done. And if it needs a bigger budget, give it a bigger budget for the CBD, yeah? I have some questions for the Mayor.
Yeah, well, no, sorry, your time's well up, and we've already, gone over that. So, however, there may be questions for you. Are there any questions? One, Councillor Vandevers.
The issue of holes being dug in George Street and having to be filled just for the Santa Parade and then dug up some of them again later, is your complaint that the Santa Parade was known about and that these hole diggings and refillings should have been anticipated?
Sorry, push the button, please. To speak again, you push the button here.
They shouldn't have even been going down George Street. Yeah, there's major roadworks going on. Yeah, I don't understand why even that was looked at. We've lost weeks and weeks being added onto this project through putting that Santa Parade through. That's my whinge. Yeah, and in our meeting, not one business was for that Santa Parade to go through, but we weren't listened to.
Thank you. Are there any further questions?
Can I ask some more questions?
No, thank you. Sorry. You could address them in a letter, though. That would be good if you do that, because I've already extended extra time for you to finish your presentation.
I thought we had questions and answers after I've read my 5 minutes.
No, look, we have a format, and sometimes we have many different speakers, and there's a very tight format for how we do this. We do the same in annual plan presentations, long-term plan presentations, 5 minutes for presentation, 5 minutes for questions. So if you have further questions, you could write a letter and you will receive a reply.
Can I come back to the next meeting and ask my 5 questions?
No, because the purpose of the presentation, the purpose of a public forum is for you to make a presentation and then we ask questions about that. If you have a list of questions for council or for me, please write a letter. Thank you.
I'm not happy about that. Not happy about that at all. But then again, why would you listen to me or anyone else in that George Street district?
Have you invited any other businesses to this?
Thank you. So we'll now be, sorry, we don't need any interruptions from the audience. Thank you. We move on to the next item on the agenda, which is apologies. I have an apology from Councillors Kevin Gilbert and Andrew Wiley for absence, and also for Councillor Fiso for early departure. I move that we accept those apologies. Seconded Councillor Walker. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Confirmation of agenda. So there is a slight change to the agenda as shown on your order papers, and that is that after item 6 we will move into non-public to consider the item there and then come back thereafter back into public. So because it's important for us to discuss that non-public item before we move to the subsequent item 7 in the agenda. So I move that we make that alteration to the agenda. Do I have a seconder for that? Seconded Councillor Ackland. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Declarations of interest, item number 5. So, do we have any alterations? I see none. Therefore, I move that the committee notes the elected members register as attached, attachment A, confirms the management plan and for elected members' interest and the executive leadership team's interest. Do I have a second for that? Deputy Mayor Lucas. Put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Item 6, the confirmation of the minutes. From the Ordinary Council meeting the 30th of January 2024. So I move that, is there any commentary on that? No? So I move that Council confirms the public part of the minutes of that meeting as a correct record. Do I have a second for that? Deputy Mayor Lucas. Any further commentary? In which case I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. And so now I move that Council, pursuant to the provisions of the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987, we exclude the public from item C2 for the reasons outlined in the agenda, and that we adjourn the meeting momentarily to enable that to happen. Seconded Councillor Walker. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. So we now move into non-public, and we will resume once we're done with the non-public part of the meeting. Miss Allen and Mrs. Bodecker to the chair, please, and Miss Canton. Great, our the three superpowers of council. And Chief Graham may have some prefacing comments.
Councillors, we're all happy to take questions.
So, does anyone have a question? Councillor Barker.
I have a little number of questions just for clarification. So my first question is, if we choose to do an annual plan, is that basically year 4 of the 2021 LTP?
That is correct. It's an update of year 4.
So usually when we're doing year 4 of the LTP, stuff gets kind of put there, where some non-urgent capital projects seem to be placed. So I just wonder what the process for prioritising the projects on the books. When I looked, there was 19 capital projects over $1 million, including the Waterfront Bridge, the Performing Arts Centre, Edgar Centre refurb. Will we need to recost and reconsult on those, or is that doesn't trigger the LTP process, does it? It's just an annual plan consulting process, would that be correct?
That is correct.
Following on from that question, we had during the annual plan consultations, we had a number of people approach us about things that they wanted, and we asked them to see that we would prepare reports for the long-term plan, and some of those reports have come through, and I think some are coming for the long-term plan. Are they now going to turn into annual reports for the annual plan? I haven't got a list in front of me, sorry.
The reports do include some of the options that were requested back through the annual plan process timing.
And digging down into the, I wanted to ask a question about the financial strategy, because in the LTP financial strategy, it says that years 2 to 10 are limited to a 6.5 rates rise on average over the 10-year period, and that forecast total operating surplus is greater than 0 for each year of the plan. It also mentions that councils consulted on the enhanced curbside waste collection. And I guess given that a lot of councils around New Zealand have signalled double-digit rates rises, would we be breaking our financial strategy that's in our LTP? Do we need to reconsult on that, or is there a way out?
No, we wouldn't need to reconsult on the financial strategy. If council decides to have a rates increase that was greater than the rate limit set in the current strategy, we would report on that in the next annual report that we had gone over the rate limit.
Thank you. So would it be correct, because I've read through the list of what's the enhanced annual plan, because it was difficult to understand what the word enhanced meant, because it sounded a little bit magic, that we pretty much do everything in our annual plans apart from the statements of service provision, that levels of service, measures, targets. Would that be correct? Because we have a lot of the other material in there, so would we be pretty sweet for that?
The one thing we don't have an annual plan currently is our group activities and financial statements at the group activity level. So they would be new in this enhanced annual plan. Everything else we currently provide, yes.
My next question is just around that development contributions recommendation, and I just wonder if there's any financial implications through not looking at it and changing it, because I can only remember the one LTP process that we've done. I'm not quite sure how we discuss development contributions, so I just want to know the impact of making that decision.
With the revised capital program for the 24-25 year, it means if it's greater than what's in the current 10-year plan, we may miss out on some development contribution revenue, but that would depend on the mix of growth, CapEx spend also. So we may miss out a little bit of revenue depending on how that looks.
Would we be able to revisit that during the next year anyway and move something to change it if we delve down into how much it would affect our budget?
Yes, we could.
Okay, just going to page 30, paragraph 33. There's a recommendation about testing the proposed levels of service, and I can't remember whether we've had the proposed levels of service through a workshop or through a report to council, and I'm just concerned about how that process is working. Will they be, if we've got some new ones that we're trying out, are we still measuring our old ones as we go along?
If we did an annual plan, we would retain the levels of service that are in the current 10-year plan, and we could test over the 12-month period the proposed new levels of service statements and measures.
And I'll just add, they haven't come formally to council yet, but we might bring them as drafts for councillors to see. Part of the reason suggesting that we test them for a year is to check that what we've said we can measure, we can actually measure, so we don't get pinged for poor record keeping.
So my next question is page 30, paragraph 36, and I just wonder, has the government signalled anything re the future development strategy? Because the whole purpose of the future development strategy was to align with the long-term plan and any infrastructure decisions. So I couldn't find anything that would signal that they were going to change that.
There hasn't been anything from the government in terms of changing the dates on the future development strategy.
So will that affect what we're doing with the future development strategy now that it doesn't line up with the LTP?
And I'm just looking to Mr. Ward, who may have an answer for that. Dave, the question is, does this, a possible change from to a 1 year, 9 year plan, does that impact negatively on the FDS?
Thank you. I am of the belief it would impact positively in terms of the FDS. It would give the FDS time to distill with the community, and for the establishment of the hearing panel and the submissions of the hearing panel to play out independently.
Thank you. And I just, I'm nearly finished. Page 44 of page 44, and it's the legal advice. And I just wanted to understand around section, because there seems to be a trick, section 97 of the LTP, because that's mentioned all through the legal advice, and the process for LTP amendments. So I just, from my understanding, wanted an example of when section 97 might be invoked, because there appears to me to be some risk in if you have an annual plan that suddenly turns into an LTP plan because you've made it some sort of decision. So I just wanted to understand the parameters of anything that might trigger an LTP.
Section 97 of the Local Government Act 2002 sets out the test for when an amendment to the LTP might be triggered. The two tests are around significant activities, and the other is in relation to the transfer of strategic assets. So an example in regard to a significant activity would be in regard to the curbside collection that we've just put through. That was consulted on through the long-term plan because it was considered a significant activity and a significant change. A transfer of ownership or control of a strategic asset would be if we transferred shares in our holding companies to ourselves, or if we were to sell, for example, the stadium or a significant asset that the council owns.
Oh, sorry. So it's not about if we were to shuffle some capital budgets that we'd signalled in the LTP, that's fine and that doesn't trigger anything? Cool, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barker, for asking 80% of my 5 questions, thus leaving 1. So my one question is asked in the context, as the papers highlight, of the difficulties surrounding forthcoming government legislative changes, namely Three Waters and the Waka Kotahi subsidy, and it's around zero carbon work we've been working on for a number of years. And the question also is in the context of acknowledging that we are doing work around, obviously, the Waste Futures and the Shaping Dunedin Future work. And I'm looking for some, and I don't know who wants to answer it, some sort of assurance that there will be a package coming to the annual plan, assuming we vote that way, and or our next meeting, about those zero carbon projects not dependent on co-funding. And I refer to those list of projects that we looked at in September, our September meeting. And in essence, can some of those be initiated if we do vote in this particular way in that annual plan, in the same way we were going to do it in the first year of a 10-year plan if things had gone calendar-wise?
So I'll answer what I think your question is, but I might not quite have it right. The September 23 budgets that you saw were very, very draft, and they've been refined considerably since then. And so some of the assumptions in 2020 in September don't hold true any longer. At the same time, the year one budget that would be essentially a change to year 4 of the current LTP will identify what impact the program of work will have from a carbon point of view. I can't remember the nomenclature that we're using for that, but Carolyn will be able to tell you. In year 1, there's a very, very small package of pure zero carbon work on top of the approximately $200 million capital program that will be year 1. But all of those items have been identified from a carbon point of view of how they impact on our zero carbon aspirations.
And yes, so following up, and excuse me for that very long-winded initial question. So part of it was asking whether we will cite that. When will we cite those? Will it be the next council meeting?
So the capital budget on the 12th and 13th will present, depending on the decision of council, either a year 1 or a 10-year capital budget, which will identify the carbon impacts of the various programs of work.
Good. Councillor Benson-Pope.
Thank you. So for the sake of clarity, I'm of the understanding, and can you confirm this or correct me please, that should we agree to the 1-year and annual plan and subsequent 9-year LT plan, that doesn't constrain any, other than perhaps triggering changes in consultation to a year of the LTP, that doesn't constrain council from making any decisions that are new about things like carbon zero or peninsula safety improvements or support for the Torrey Gorge, for example.
That is correct.
Thank you.
It's not quite as straightforward as that. So it will be issue by issue.
I understand that, but some may trigger something that additional, but the adoption of this process, because of this, all sorts of reasons, including the statutory uncertainty about several things, doesn't constrain us from making any strategic decisions about anything that we might make.
That's true, but some of the decisions you might choose to make may trigger an amendment, at which point we are in a full-blown LTP process as opposed to an annual plan process.
Just need to be mindful of that. Very good. Councillor O'Malley.
And I'm just specifically asking just one line item really, and that's the Three Waters new capital moving from 12 to 38 million between year 4 and this budget as the numbers proposed budget. Will that kick off that or not?
Will that trigger an amendment? Is that your question? No.
There we go. Councillor Houlihan.
Thank you. Moving from a 9-year, from a 1-year, 9-year, if we do that, is it possible that that will help give us time to alleviate perhaps debt increases? What I mean is, rate increases. So give us time to perhaps, where we thought we might have a huge rate increase, we may not have such a high increase if we delay the 10-year plan. Is that fair to say, or not really?
Not really. An annual plan, 9-year plan process gives council time to consider its financial strategy, and so you get to recast your financial strategy. You don't change your current financial strategy under an annual plan, 9-year plan process.
Okay. Councillor Gary?
I just want to check. I know that Councillor Fisto has to leave early. I'm happy to give up my... No? Fine. I have several questions. The first one is around if we go down the 1+9 and we vote for that, and unintended consequences is what I'm looking to check, and I'm going to give an example. How does that affect the RLTP timing and decisions?
Is anyone here able to provide definitive advice on that?
If you don't have it budgeted in your plan, then the Wakatahi will not consider that you're taking it seriously, so you'll get a really poor score, and that'll drop your chances of coming down. But that's it, really. Yeah. Transport one isn't moving that much in the budget that I imagine that our submissions to the RLTP have changed that much by the look of it.
Matters that have always been the case, it's got to be in there, still holds true in this case. Yeah. Okay, second question is, we were expecting, of course, because we were expecting to be in the long-term plan process, the report, which was a result of the last annual plan resolution around the Peninsula Connection funding options. When will we get that particular report now? Will that be one of the ones that comes to us very soon?
No, it won't. That report, as we had previously signalled, would have been wrapped up in the 10-year plan capital budget. So if council resolves to do a 10-year plan, that will be a subsection of the overall capital report. If you do a annual plan, it will come as part of the 9-year plan.
And thirdly, we're talking about particular projects, just referring to Councillor Benson Pope's question. Would the Peninsula Connection, say the first stage of that unfunded section from Otako bus stop to Fisheries Corner, for example, would that trigger an amendment as described by you if it was included in the annual plan, for example?
I think we'd have to give some further consideration to that. I couldn't answer that definitively here.
Thanks for that, Ms. Canton. And finally, just a point of clarification, and this will be for, I think, the Chief. I note the date of the 30th of June 2025 for the adoption of the LTP if we go for the 9-year option. I'm assuming that'll be well clear of the, I don't know how to describe them, the limitations, the framework put in place prior to local government elections within the organisation. I can't recall what we described them as, but will that be well clear of that? Because
it will be, I would imagine, if you choose to do a 9-year plan, we would have hearings and deliberations in May, and so and then staff will finalise the document for adoption in June.
And finally, around the consultation, can we have a wee bit more detail about, the engagement on the annual plan? Can we have a wee bit more detail about how that would be, borne out?
Yes, Councillor, I'm happy to take that. So very similar to what you saw last year for the annual plan process, and I'll just jog your memories. So we did numerous socials. We did about 4 weeks in a row of Middle of the Star newspaper, full page advertisements. We did some individual work with different groups who are a little harder to reach than the community as a whole. So we would be taking that kind of approach, except a little more detailed, because we'd be explaining why we were annual planning rather than LTPing.
And do we have some idea, if we do go down this 1+9, thank you for that, Ms Marsh, do we have an idea of the timing of hearings, etc., and decision-making timing?
Likely May or end of May, June, in that time.
And I ask that question because there's an awful lot of confusion already out in the community, and something we're going to have to address, and no doubt will. Thank you.
Okay, so if we've exhausted questions, I'd like to move the motion. We clearly haven't, so we'll go to Councillor Walker, then Deputy Mayor Lucas, then Councillor O'Malley. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thanks. Just come to mind now, but maybe, I don't know who wants to answer this one. There's a number of groups, and I won't name them all, but I know of 3 or 4 who regularly come to long-term plan and get their 3 years funding, and on they go and on they march. How would they sit if we do decide to vote for the 1.9 in the context of this? Would they just simply come to the annual plan and ask for a year?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Lucas.
Thank you. I just would like a little bit of clarity on expansion before following on, I think, from...
Microphone.
I'm not sure who answered this. About the rate increase that's currently in our LTP. We're not bound by what's currently in there. That's that was set, obviously, 3 years ago. So we're free to choose and make a decision, obviously, on budgets and whatever, and the rate increase can be...
That's correct.
Very good. Councillor O'Malley.
I'm pretty sure it's in here somewhere, but I can't find it again. If we do an annual plan, then this time next year we're starting to get into the 9-year plan, and then the elections are coming straight away. And the new council comes in inheriting that plan like they do with the 10-year plan. Normally they only have to deal with it for 1 year, and then they get to do the next 10-year plan. It is correct, right, that the cycle will reset itself at that same time, right? So the new council coming in is not going to be sitting for 2 years with a plan, right? Okay, thank you.
Very good. Councillor Mayer.
Just following on from Councillor Walker's questions, there were some things that we discussed around, my example is the funding of Orokonui Eco Sanctuary was going to be reviewed in the 10-year plan. So again, would they just come to the annual plan around that?
Yes.
Councillor Barker.
Sorry, just one more question. We had a paper on the 30th of January about the significant forecasting assumptions, and we had a bunch of high-level uncertainty, which was future legislative changes around Three Waters reform, RMA, and then at medium, the Waka Kotahi subsidy rate. So if we were to choose to defer it, would those levels of uncertainty / risk lower in our next significant, well, hopefully they're lower, in our next significant forecasting assumptions?
We would review them all again and reassess the level of risk.
Any further questions? I see none. So I would like to move that Council approves the preparation of an annual plan, followed by a 9-year plan, and extend the life of the current development contributions policy to June 25. Seconded Deputy Mayor Lucas. So, in speaking to this, I think primarily we as a council have a duty of care to produce the best long-term plan we can. And I asked the rhetorical question, what would be the point of producing a 10-year plan now with so much uncertainty, when in 12 months' time, most of those uncertainties I would like to think will be resolved. So that we're in a much better position to know all of the details that are required to make a good quality long-term plan. And so, the three key details I'm talking about are, of course, number one, the three waters. And the government has promised us new structural and financing tools. And really, we don't have a very clear idea of what they will be at all. We can view them with optimism or pessimism, but I think it's best to wait till we know what they are and how they may benefit us to produce the best possible plan that we can for our ratepayers, so that we're in full possession of the facts as they have been determined by the government. And the Three Waters budget is our single largest budget item. So, and after all, what's a long-term plan about if not the budgeting and finance? So we really need to have some resolution there. And given that the first bill of the new Three Waters plan will be passed by mid-24 and the second bill will be introduced by December 24, we should have a pretty clear idea of the detail, so to enable us to proceed. Our second largest budget item is transport. And so the final GPS is out by July 24, so we will have some clarity on what the government intends from their government policy statement. And of course that has a big influence on, on co-funding for various elements, some of which have been mentioned today, but also on our carbon zero plans. So we're going to be in a much better state of information when it comes to making that longer term plan. And lastly, there's our investment plan, our own investment plan, which is on the other side of the equation. So we've got two very large the two largest expense items, but on the funding item, there is something that could make a significant difference to us in terms of the funding. So all of those things add up to very compelling reasons in my book why we should be doing a 1-year plan now and a 9-year plan in 12 months' time. So our ability to pay and our ability to get some financial stability into the council books, I think, are paramount to the success of the plan that we prepare. So waiting for a year makes very good sense to me. Who else would like to speak to this? Councillor O'Malley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I've been ambivalent all the way through as to whether we do a 1 and a 9 or whether we do a 10-year plan, and I just want to speak to really what a 10-year plan is it's a 3-year plan with a 7 years additional horizon on it, and every year you get away from year 1, your accuracy of your prediction gets less and less and less. So my main concern going into this, but it's now availed, was that the year 4 of the previous plan would have numbers in it, especially around some of the capital spends that are not related to what we're going to do and what we would have been doing in year 1 of the 10-year plan. But it appears that won't kick off anything particularly procedurally important, so that doesn't matter too much. When we talk about the Three Waters funding model uncertainty, I'm willing to bet anybody, if they want, just a small bet, that basically there's not going to be any compelling changes to the way we're going to get funded. And so there's not really any uncertainty, and I would almost argue that the level of uncertainty is the same as it was under the previous government when legislation was coming through and we set a 10-year plan not knowing if that government would be in place or if that legislation would in fact take effect, and it didn't. So we managed to set them in the past with that level of political uncertainty. I'm not sure if the GPS is coming out in June. I have a feeling that might be the Regional Land Transport Plan, because the last time I was at the Regional Transport Committee it was forecast to come out at the end of February, and we're all waiting on it coming out because we can't set the Regional Land Transport Plans until it comes out. And I guess that's where I've been in the past, is that there's always a certain level of mismatch between what the government is doing and what you have to do. But 80 to 90% of your tasks are obvious in front of you, and you tend to do them because you know you're going to have to do them. So my concerns were, are we going to be able to take year 4 of the old 10-year plan and turn that into this annual plan? And it appears that we can, so I'm happy enough with that. And then the other one was thinking of the receiving council on the 9-year plan. I didn't want them to get into year 3 before they had a chance to actually put their stamp on the economy. So I don't know. I'm happy enough to go forward with this. I'm not really sure when people talk about the level of uncertainty and other such things that it's really there. I just think it's a term that we tend to repeat to each other because everything has a certain level of uncertainty to it. Thanks.
Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sort of pretty much agree with your commentary, Mr. Mayor, but I am a little bit more concerned about the level of uncertainty. I mean, this is basic. 10-year plan is a big financial decision-making process, and to me, there's a lot of missing links in being able to make those larger scale decisions. And I actually will give credit to the current coalition government in recognising that difficulty and giving local authorities this opportunity to take some time to have some space to understand what those gaps will have been if we went ahead, and I think we will have a lot more clarity around the bigger things that we as an organisation have to deal with, particularly Three Waters, which makes up a large majority of our budgets. And I did ask the question around our zero carbon work, and I do take assurance that there will be clearer information coming to the March Council meeting detailing what work we can progress that's not dependent on a particular level of government co-funding. And just in deeper terms, to me, we should honour not only this council's commitment to our zero carbon work, but also I think we need to honour the incredible work over many years, actually, of our staff working on this, and of course our current zero carbon team. I'd have to remind people a year is a long time when it comes to climate change and the effects therein, and we simply can't keep kicking the can down the road on when it comes to initiating measures, I guess to stem the effects of any climate effects that accrue within our city. And if we don't start on some of those measures now, particularly those that aren't, as I mentioned previously, dependent on government co-funding, I guess we're not only reneging on some of our previous commitments, but I think ultimately we're going to be leaving a larger and ever-increasing gap that is going to have to be made up by generations that follow. Thanks.
Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was ambivalent and of two minds. That's why I had such a lot of questions, and especially about triggering the LTP amendment process, because that was my concern, was that we went ahead with something that was an annual plan and then ended up triggering an LTP. It's kind of annoying that it popped up so late in the LTP process, but I think that we have been given the gift of time. And there's a lot of uncertainty about Three Waters and transport, which actually is 64% of our capex and 46% of our opex. So it's really difficult to go ahead with our budget if we can't see 10 years ahead. We can't even see the horizon of a year. So there's no path forward really for funding Three Waters except for us to fund our own water. I don't believe that we can achieve that balance separation, and I can't see a clear solution for councils' infrastructure woes throughout New Zealand, so I hope to see what the government's magic plan is. The water is very murky and it lacks clarity. And there's a large change in focus signal for transport, which means that we need to review all of our projects and work to align them. That's why it's important to find out what that timing is for when the government policy statement comes out. We're dependent on the government for up to 50% of our transport funding, so we need to make sure that we are agile about that. The road ahead is full of blind corners that we can't see around. This is an unusual time. Ordinarily I would go, let's go with all of the work that we've done, but I think there's a whole lot of fast reform surprises coming through. When did we find out about this? Maybe a couple of weeks ago that we had this alternative, and it is, I guess, a turbulent time, so I always find that it's best to be conservative when we're looking, when we're approaching these. We've also lost time on the LTP because our staff have been busy with all of the changes in the rules coming through, bouncing from one to another, so I feel it's quite hard for the staff, when they should be concentrating on the LTP, to be concentrating on what the government are doing to to make things a little bit more difficult for us. And we've done a lot of work on the LTP, and I didn't want to lose that as well. We know we've all been to countless workshops and read papers and work streams and all that kind of stuff. So that was one of my concerns about losing that work, and also my concern about how the community would feel about this going forward. But I think that it's been very well canvassed that there is a lot of uncertainty. That's why I asked about our significant forecasting assumptions that we looked at on the 30th of January, because there was a lot of high risk in there and a lot of uncertainty, which was making me nervous. So I do believe that we need to get our ducks in a row. When I look at the advantages and disadvantages in the paper, it was there that it is a disadvantage that the levels of service would remain unchanged, and I actually think it's probably an advantage, because I think that we actually need to take a lot of time, and I like the idea of testing new levels of service as we go through for a year, because it's a big thing to change your levels of service. One of my other concerns was just about doing, I think Councillor O'Malley brought it up, an LTP in an election year, and I think Councillor Gary mentioned that as well, because that is a time when politicians get political. However, we have to focus on what is best for our community, so I hope we do focus on that. We've also seen that other councils have gone ahead with their LTPs, but I think they were ahead in the process, and some of our neighbours who've got big water problems, I think they'll be doing a revision of their LTPs, which costs time and money, and that is what we are hopefully trying to avoid is wastage. So we can plan all we like for the medium term, but the reality is that we think we understand what's happening in the short term, and I think that having an annual plan rather than a long-term plan is a sensible solution at the moment.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Lucas.
Thank you. I think I'm here to make the best decisions that we can for the people of Dunedin, and I think that means being informed as best that we can. And having all of the information that we possibly can. And I don't think we've got that at the moment. I think, as we said, we're waiting to see what the government decides about Three Waters. We're waiting to hear what's happening in terms of transport. As we've heard, that FDS, Mr Ward, have said he thinks that's going to better inform us. We're doing the strategic refresh on our four well-beings, and I think that needs to, we've talked about that actually needs to be driving our LTP process. And this allows us to get those ducks in the line. And I just think it's about working as best that we can, working smarter, being pragmatic. I think there's some savings in this year. We don't have to have an audit this year. All of those other things that there's no wasted time and work that the staff have already done. That just rolls forward to next year. And I think the people of Dunedin, they've voted us in here to work the best that we can and make decisions with the absolute best information. So that's for the best for the future of the city. And I think by going with the annual plan and then a 9-year plan, we'll definitely be in a far better position to do that.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would concur with Councillor Lucas's comments around certainty that we will achieve, and I want to acknowledge particularly the staff in all of these uncertain times, the Chief for her leadership, and the staff who've grappled with these real difficulties as central government decisions have come out almost on a daily basis. So thank you for all of your work towards this. I've always had a mantra, assume the best until you learn otherwise. However, in this particular case, I'm with Councillor O'Malley. I can't see there being any extra funding coming, and particularly for me, in the Three Waters space, but we will see. I'd love to be proven wrong, but I fear that I may not be. I am concerned, I'm certainly supportive of the motion, but I am concerned about unintended consequences. And in the zero carbon space, I'm very aware climate change doesn't stop. The impact of climate change doesn't stop. We've got a 2030 zero carbon goal, and we're late already. And so I am, like Councillor Walker, really keen to see what is it we can do in that space without depending on government co-funding. There's got to be things that we can do, and I know we have a very smart team working there. And I don't want to see us lose the momentum that's already started in that space. I think that's really important. So that's what I'll be looking for. The other unintended consequence is another year of delay around the Peninsula Connection, and the resolution that was passed in last year's annual plan asked for a report so that we knew what the funding options were. And now we're not going to get that until we do our 9-year plan, which is particularly disappointing, and given the article in today's paper, I would suggest far too late. So given the commitment of council in the past on that, I will be looking to see that one section that is referred to in today's paper, Otako bus stop to the Fisheries Corner, for our teams to be working creatively and smartly to see how that work could be included in the annual plan. So I'm happy to support this, but I realise that it's complicated in terms of how we proceed, and I will be looking for the determination on whether that particular project would trigger an amendment or not. Thank you.
Okay, so we have exhausted our speakers. Thank you. So, and in my right of reply, I have nothing further to add because everyone spoke positively about the motion. So I'm optimistic about it. So I'll now put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Next item is number 8. The Ministry of Primary Industries proposal. Ms Gray and Ms Austin coming to the chair. Do we have any opening comments or should we go straight to questions?
Happy to take questions, Mr Mayor.
Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Vandevers. Does anyone have any questions? There appear to be none. Okay, so we have a mover and seconder. Councillor Vandevers, would you like to speak to it?
Just to say that the recommendation from the staff, the submission seems very clear to me, requiring territorial authorities to collect the proposed MPI levy imposes additional financial administrative burdens, as well as not being, I think, a well thought through idea in the first place. I think the submission basically clearly says, please don't do it.
Thank you. I've got a couple of comments about it, and I think I agree with what Councillor Vandevers has to say about it. But it seems kind of counterintuitive with the direction of the current government to be centralising bureaucracy and administrative processes rather than devolving them to local processes. So levying the whole of small local businesses throughout the country to fund an additional level of bureaucracy in Wellington just seems like that perhaps the ministry here has got the wrong end of the stick. And I think the approach, well, it looks just like an unfunded mandate and taking power away from council and imposing additional burden of work to do on local councils throughout the country, and also having to have us collect the money for them and chase any bad debtors or any resistance that people might want to pay to central government. It seems completely counterintuitive with the general direction of the current government. So I think us making a strong submission as we have here is really significant and important. And, we have, this government is questioning quite a number of centralised bureaucracies. And of course, we being a local bureaucracy are an example, in particular, of food regulation, where I would argue that we have been doing a better job. So I think they are likely to take notice of our submission. And I think the approach that the ministry is taking is highly inequitable, and naturally they will take that into consideration as they take this bill forward. Who else are my speakers? Councillor O'Malley.
This one should be fairly short. Lower taxes always end up meaning greater fees, and this is basically a movement of government costs over to the stores and telling you that somehow your tax burden has gone down when it hasn't.
Very good. Thank you. Councillor Walker. Oh, Councillor Houlihan.
Thank you. Yeah, this government has indicated it wanted to work positively with business. If this is an example of it, I think they're doing a poor job. This is not going to be positive for business at all to increase their costs when many of these businesses are hurting from COVID. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with what everybody said, but particularly Councillor O'Malley, because it looks like this government has realised they need to make cuts, that it was indicated in the news recently they want to make cuts of just over 7% across the board, and I think we're getting the end of it. And they're thinking, oh, we'll pass that cost on to councils. Well, I think what we're doing today is giving them a strong message, we don't want it. So take your costs away and carry your own debt. Thanks very much.
Councillor Barker.
Thank you. Someone who's worked in a food business and outrageous level of compliance costs. I totally agree with this submission. I also note in the conclusion where it says the proposals discussed in the document are intended to strengthen the operating environment for New Zealand food, make it easier to operate within and to reduce the risk from food, and I think they totally do not do this. I'm also very concerned about making council making them take the fees in. So I totally agree with this submission, and thank you for doing it.
Good. Any further speakers? Right of reply, Councillor? Happy to put, okay. Therefore, I'll put the motion that we approve the DCC submission rejecting MPI's proposal. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 9. The financial result. So we have Ms. Allen to the chair. And any opening comments before we go to questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one page was recirculated. There were some headings cut off, so hopefully you've all received that. And other than that, happy to take the report as read.
Very good. Do we have any questions? Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just checking up on, what page are we on? 124 about the eyesight Octagon premises refresh, which came in at what looks like $438,867. Were we getting 50% of that money back from Tourism New Zealand for that?
Yes, that's what we had budgeted.
So where will that sit in the budget? Because it kind of looks like we spent a real lot of money on it.
Yes, that would come in the operational grants and the grants and subsidies in the income statement as a capital grant. Yes.
Questions, Deputy Mayor Lucas.
Thank you. The capital spend to date, I know that we're tracking ahead of budget by about $4 million, and we'd had indications previously that we were going to have some capital savings, and I know there's several capital projects that have already spent their full year budget, Dunedin urban cycleways, there's a whole heap of them, stormwater renewals, I could go on and on. So about those budgets, those capital items that are already fully spent, are they complete? And also, where then do we think we're going to find the savings, or if we're already $4.5 million ahead?
I couldn't answer whether they're all complete or not, but what I can tell you is that our latest forecast still has us on track to being within budget by year end.
That includes the purchase of Forbury Park. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think latest forecast 191 million, give or take.
Yes, give or take, yeah.
And I noticed that our interest costs are significantly down. So that's the difference, because we're actually significantly, well, not significantly, what we budgeted and what we've been charged by Treasury is actually making a difference. I just haven't quickly.
Yes, we're paying 4.66%. I think our budget was 4.85. Yeah, there's just a slight difference there. Yep.
Yeah, so we're $1 million better off. Will that rate continue, or is it for the rest of the period, or do we think that might change?
Looking for a nod there from, we haven't been advised of a change on that. We've been working on the rate for next year, and we're lifting it to 5%, but for the current year, yeah.
Councillor Barker.
Sorry, I have a couple of more things. I was just looking at the, what page am I on again? Page 124 again, just about the acquisitions for the Dunedin Public Art Gallery, and I note that the budget was $110,000, but there's been $125,000 spent, and also noted in the previous annual report that they were also $26,000 over budget, yet the Society don't necessarily seem to be investing their own capital. What's the process for follow-up on checking on that?
Just on that, so we have been advised this morning that there is a coding issue there. So although the DCC rate funded line looks over, some of that expenditure should be in the line above it.
My next question was just on page, I've just noticed that I had it highlighted now, and sorry I didn't ask it before, page 132, and this is the state summary of operating variances, and under galleries, libraries and museum, the budget was a deficit of 2696 and the actual was 2696, and I just find that a little odd to be bang on unless they're incredibly good at accounting. Do you think that needs a little bit more investigation just to check on? It's in the first two columns.
Yes, I see that. I think so. The breakdown is on those columns to the right.
I just wonder whether it needed, because it's such a bang on, no one else ever that I've seen manages to hit the budget on top. So I just wonder if that just needs a little bit of investigation.
Happy to check that for you.
Other questions? Councillor Walker, did you have a question? Yes.
I did have my hand up this time. Just on page 128, question of curiosity around some of our Shaping Future Dunedin work, and as we know, we've got that 375/750 in there for central city bike hubs, and the suggestion we've spent 4689. Where does maybe Mr. McLean knows where that has gone?
Hey, thank you, Councillor. We've rephased some of that. We've come up with a smarter way to deliver bike hubs. We get more of them for a lower cost. So better bang for buck, if you like. So some of that's been rephased out.
Just a question of if it's fair of me to do this. Are you happy to sit down with me at some point and explain that in more detail?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Councillor Barker.
Usually I have my questions written down, but I didn't. And this one's on page 134, and it's about the unfavourable revenue for the Art Gallery Toitu and Lanyuan. And I completely, you can all see that Nova Cafe is empty, but it says there's no rental income from Toitu Cafe. And have they, blatantly going to ask, have they been given a rent holiday, or why is there no rental income from the Toitu Cafe when it is operating? Oh, okay. I think his answer.
What was the answer?
No, just based on our last Toitu meeting, the answer to that question basically is if there was a rental income, then there wouldn't be a cafe. If that makes any sense.
So we don't charge rent?
seems to be the case.
And the other one I just wanted to flag was just seeing that trend on page 139 of the parking services and operations, the revenue being unfavourable, $500,000. And there a comment that it continues to be impacted by changing habits. There was some discussion in previous ones about working from home, about the works in George Street, and I've just written there, needs to investigate this trend. So I wonder if there's other places that we can get information about that, because it is concerning.
We'll follow that up and have a look.
Okay. Question, Deputy Mayor Lucas.
Councillor Barker's just asked two questions that I had, but also I was going to ask on page 134 where there's a $200,000 grant for Toitu for a capital upgrade as part of the museum. So is that for the capital upgrade that is already in their budget that's showing very little spent, or is that for an additional capital item? So at the moment, I can't quickly find it, Toitu, in terms of new capital, there's nothing of that significance budgeted for the year. So I'm just wondering, what is that for something that's not in their budget?
As I understand it, that project is underway. That's on page 125 of the capital expenditure program.
But that's not acquisitions, which is budgeted at 90,000, and then minor capital works was only 25, or the 4-year budget is 40,000. So I'm just kind of not sure what the project is.
Yeah, we can get more information on that. Did you want to answer that? As I understand it, it's the line just below that. So it's the top of page 125.
It's the unbudgeted asset renewals of 260,000. That's unbudgeted.
The budget for that's the next line. Yep.
Right. Are there any more questions?
Happy to move.
Happy to move. So it's been moved by Councillor Vandervis, seconded by Deputy Mayor Lucas. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor? I'm sure.
Yes, thank you. I'm happy to move this financial result to 31st December 2023 because it's clear, it's detailed and it's accurate. There's 25 pages here that really give you a very good idea of where we're going. I'm happy to move it because of those reasons, but I'm very unhappy with what this detailed financial result is telling us. And if you're not that keen on looking at charts, and I never have been, if you look at the graph, particularly the graph on page 119, the debt graph showing the DCC and group debt, and then also if you look at page 137, the year-to-date capital expenditure, and in particular the way that that capital expenditure is broken down by activity. And there's been a lot of talk about Three Waters being the great chunk of it at 41%, but transportation is close behind at 34%, and transportation is something that we really have a lot more ability to do something about if we were of a mind to stop the rapid spending that I've long worried about. As I've said over many years, I believe that the DCC is in a debt crisis and that currently it is rapidly getting worse. We have an unsustainable debt in my view, and this debt has two major problems for us. The first problem is that debt severely limits resilience. We have limited financial ability to respond to serious threats, whether they're natural or man-made. The second issue, and this is becoming much more apparent now with interest rates, is that debt interest costs become unaffordable. Not just unaffordable, but actually unsustainable. And we are looking now at straight down the barrel of a second unbalanced budget, where we're going to have to borrow to basically make ends meet. There's some facts and figures in this report and some outside of it that I'd like to highlight. The DCC book debt has been moved to our DCC companies' books in various ways, sometimes in a large amount, like the 100 million DCC debt that was moved into the companies from the stadium. But also millions every year from Torrey Gorge Railway. These are debts that have been taken off our books and basically put on the company books, and because of that, it's our total group debt that is therefore what really matters. The group debt is what the rating agency Standard & Poor's looks at also for this reason. And our Standard & Poor's financial outlook has been downgraded from stable to negative. Current interest costs on our group debt are $1 million a week, and budgeted to be 1.5 million per week within only 2 years. If you look at the DCC graph on page 119, this based on the DCC long-term assumption of a 5% interest rate. The ANZ Bank has recently predicted that the official cash rate, that is the Reserve Bank lever that essentially drives interest rates, will go up twice this year to 6%. Kiwi Bank Chief Executive last week has made a public plea to the Reserve Bank not to keep raising the official cash rate. An indication again that the chances of this cash rate coming down anytime soon are highly unlikely. DCC spending budgets continue to increase at what I believe are unsustainable levels. DCC capital spending continues to exceed these budgets, already inflated in my view, currently at 104%. We had an unbalanced budget last year and would need another, or we would need to raise rates by something like 35% to avoid another unbalanced budget this year. The alternative, as seen on the predicted debt graph on page 119 again, is for the DCC to borrow again this next year over $100 million to be able to bring our next rates increase down to something near 20%. Our DCC-owned companies continue to fail to deliver a commercial dividend and have failed to deliver a dividend for 7 years since 2015. Our Waipori Fund investment failed to maintain its inflation-adjusted value last year and will fail again this year, mainly due to higher inflation and interest rates. We have a debt and council company crisis, in my view. We must, in my view, stop spending on all increases in service levels if we are to address the issue. We need to stop spending. We need to make sure that we no longer increase service levels, no more new cycleways, no more new boardwalks, no more peninsula road widening as called for in today's ODT, no more park and ride projects, no more wayfinding projects, no new water treatment projects, no new toilets, no new traffic diversions or anything else until we can flatten the debt curve. If we fail to flatten the debt curve, The debt curve will simply force us progressively over the next few years into more and more restrictions regarding what we can do, and make us even less resilient if we have a real serious issue than we already are. So happy to vote for this because it's accurate, it's detailed, and it's very clear what's going on. What's not so clear is whether we have a will to deal with the problem.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor O'Malley.
Mr Mayor, it's interesting that Councillor Vanders points out that we're now starting to spend more on transport, and we're obviously spending more on Three Waters, and I would say that I am frustrated as a councillor that I'm having to sit there as Chair of Infrastructure and may have to wear a lot of the negative that will come back into our increased capital spends because of what people did in the 1990s and the early 2000s when they were saying, I will keep rates low and not invest in the future or not invest in what we're doing right now. We could the unbalanced budget, Councillor Vandervis, we've been going through this a number of times. It mostly sits with the water bill, and we could balance the budget tomorrow by putting $700 to $800 into the water bill. And I think we have decided that the only way to really deal with that is to step it up over a number of steps so households have an opportunity to respond to it. But the idea that you could suggest that we're not going to invest in water plants means firstly you're asking the Chief Executive, because if you look at the Water Services Act, a person conducting business is actually criminally responsible if they do not respond to what is required. So if you are suggesting that we should not spend on water plants and not meet the regulator, you are suggesting that the Chief Executive...
Point of order.
What is the point of order?
The point of order is that Councillor O'Malley has misrepresented what I said. What I clearly said was increased levels of service and new water plants. And I've written it down here.
Oh, look.
Fair enough, I'll take it back.
Thank you. Carry on.
As far as I know, we're not building any new water plants, so I guess that was where my confusion came from. We are upgrading the existing ones. But here's the deal. If you don't spend now and you postpone something you need to do in the future, you are quite literally just putting it off for somebody else to have to do. I don't believe that these budgets are full of what you would call vanity projects or ridiculous spending rates. It is simply the cost of doing business, it's the cost of delivering a good council. And we can either choose to fund it or not fund it. Currently, our interest rates are costing us 11%, and they were budgeted at 12.9% of rates. So, and the target that we've got to stay below is 30. So we're 1/3 of the way up to that target of worrying about our interest rates. I understand that's a relevant thing to do, but seriously, it's sitting there right there. We're way under the upper limit that we're paying on interest as a percentage of our rates. So I'm telling you now, Standards and Poor's are running around the country trying to frighten the bejesus out of everybody so that we do exactly what they want, which is they said to the Department of Internal Affairs early on, politicians cannot be trusted with these assets. They don't believe they should be in our hands. So they create the environment of fear, and then those who want to listen to that environment of fear then reproduce it and spend it here and say it here in the middle of this chamber. But we've had too many years of that behaviour, and that's why we're facing this crisis. A reckoning is coming, but not facing the reckoning is the most irresponsible and the least resilient thing you can do for your city.
Councillor Walker.
Here to that last comment by the councillor. I thank Councillor Vandervis for his recidivist speech, which I've heard many times around this table. And I'll simply, I'll be brief by saying we become resilient by investing in and our city for future generations. We do not mortgage our city, and I think I speak for everybody around this table. We don't mortgage our city for future generations to come to pay for. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have exhausted speakers, so Councillor Bisbee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot has been made, and the word accuracy was used a large number of times, along with a lot of other provocative comment. I have to say, I've always thought that one of the most important parts of these reports was the table you see at the bottom right of page 118. Councillor O'Malley just referred to part of that, but for the wider public benefit, let me talk about the detail. In terms of interest as a percentage of rates revenue, our target is 30%, less than 30%. Our budget was 12.9%, and the actual performance is below that at 11.8%. The second key indicator was interest as a percentage of total revenue. Our target is less than 20%. The budget was 8.1%, and staff have delivered 7.2%. And overall, the final line is debt as a percentage of annualised revenue. Our maximum is 250%. The budget was 165, and the delivery in this report is 162. So all those parameters have been set by council, and in each one of the three cases, the targets have been delivered below the budget target, which is a major success and a complete contradiction of what the chairman of the Finance Committee would have you believe.
Right. Councillor Gary.
I wasn't going to speak, but I feel so moved just to make a couple of points. And the first one is in the speaking to the motion, Councillor Vandervis made the point about the accurate and clear, and I don't recall the last adjective, financial information. I want to make the point that we have always been provided with accurate, clear financial information. So it's not like this is the first time, which was the impression one could be left with. And I also make the point that we are not alone in these financial challenges that have in large part been caused by the Three Waters situation. We share those challenges with other councils all around New Zealand, and so I remind us of that, and I concur with the comments made by my colleagues, Councillors Benson, Pope Walker and Councillor O'Malley.
Thank you. All right, Councillor Vandervis, your right of reply.
There seems to be some confusion around the table between a budget target and a budget limit. There also seems to me to be a strong need not to actually talk about what the real debt is and how much it's costing us, but to talk about the debt always as a percentage of something else, a percentage of X, Y, and Z. If you look at the annual report, that is a fairly thick document, almost a centimetre. It has a financial table at the front of it, which purports to give you a summary of the DCC finances. And in it, again, you see debt as a percentage of X and debt as a percentage of Y, but absolutely no mention of what the debt is, or the fact that this $1 billion debt is going to go up to $1.5 billion within 2 years. This truly extraordinary and unprecedented increase. In all the years I've been on council, we've looked at debt with a graph that had millions up the side. It's now billions up the side. And what have we got to show for it?
Point of order.
What is the point of order?
The Speaker is exercising his right of reply, Mr. Chairman. He's outside standing orders because he's introducing new material clearly specified in the standing orders.
look, I don't agree. I think he's just commenting on the graph, which he's already spoken on, and in response to, the other elements of the debate that focused on percentages as opposed to whole numbers. Carry on.
Thank you. I was also responding to Councillor Gary's claim that we have always been provided with accurate, clear and complete information. To me, if you don't actually give the quantum of the debt that you're dealing with and the quantum of the interest that you're required to pay in your financial summary, then you're not getting the complete, clear summary that you should get. And that is why I was very happy to vote for and move this particular agenda item, because I believe it does give you really everything you need to know if you're prepared to look at it, especially if you're prepared to look at the graphs. It's all there. The graphs gives you context. The graphs show you that we're overspending our already what I consider to be inflated budgets. The graphs show you that in terms of our future, that there is no way we can avoid having unbelievably large rates increases in the next year or two. And I'm saying 20% to me is unavoidable at this point, even with the borrowing of another $100 million to make it not 35%. So what we have in front of us is accurate. I'm very happy that the report clearly tells us where we sit right up until the end of last year. It's up to date. But to me, it's also a clarion call for us to start looking at our spending and deciding that actually an ever-increasing rate of debt is no way to run a council, and we need to flatten the curve. Hope you'll all vote for it on the basis of it's very complete and tells you what you need to know.
Thank you. With that, you can see the motion on the screen behind me that Council notes the financial performance for the period ending 31 December 2023. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Waipori Fund, item number 10, page 141. Mr Davey will come to the chair. And Ms Allen returns. Do we have any opening comments?
The fund had a pleasing quarter, being up 4.9%, and the total gain was 4.6 million, kind of rebounding from the performance in the September quarter. Also, just to note, the fund is up another 1.3 million in January. And I'd just like to highlight the table on page 145 has been updated, and I think you've got a copy of that in your hands.
Very good. Thank you. Questions? Councillor Walker, you must have a question. You're making noises.
I did have a question. Well done. You're reading my mind. It's a question on page 145, and it relates to the dividend and interest there, where the div quarter target and the interest targets vary significantly to the actual. Is that because the selling of a stock that was maybe put into an interest-bearing account, or what? They seem to have reversed.
I can't answer that right here. I can look into that and get some more information for you.
It's just the div 156.
Sorry, speaker, microphone, sorry. Okay. Are there any other questions? We have no questions then. Thank you very much. That was very brief. Happy to move. So, Councillor Deputy Mayor Lucas has indicated willingness to move, and Councillor Walker to second. Would you like to speak to it, Deputy Mayor Lucas?
Thank you. Just briefly, I just think it's pleasing to see that the fund the September quarter, and I mean, looking at the graph on page 142, it's good to see that we're starting in a positive trend that has been quite some time that we've got that trend, and then to hear also, which had been my question, that January has continued that trend with another $1 million positive rebounding. So I think that's a very positive outlook going forward. Thank you.
Very good. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, and just briefly on top of that, just a reminder, because it's sort of in the context of the previous discussion we had, and I think Councillor Van Der Vos alluded to this in his commentary. Just a reminder to everybody around this table, this is a long-term investment, primarily in equities, and the returns will be accrued over the long term. I don't know how many times I've said that around here, but there will be downs, there will be ups, and ultimately, as we can see from the graphs, over the long term, it is an increasing total on this very well managed fund. Thank you to the team.
I concur, and with that, I presume there's no further to be gained. Therefore, I'll put the motion that we note the report from Dunedin City Treasury on the Waipori Fund for the quarter ending 31 December 2023. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. And on to item final, number 11, page 146, road closures for the March graduation parade, the Anzac Day services and road safety demonstration in Harrop Street. We have moved by Councillor Benson Pope and seconded by Councillor Houlihan, but first we have the opportunity to ask any questions. I imagine that there are no prefacing comments? No. But are there any questions? Are there any questions? So there we go. Look, thank you for your patience in waiting and attending the meeting. There are no questions. Are there any comments about the report? Are there any? Do you want to speak to the report? Yes.
Just very briefly, given our public forum presentation this morning, I just want to remind us all that many of these events add significant economic benefit to our city. It's not around pandering to anyone. It's around keeping our city vibrant and adding to that economic benefit, and also the celebration, and I particularly draw attention to the graduation parades, which bring in a lot of people to the city, a lot of money to the city. We have families coming to support their young people as they graduate, and it brings a real sense of vibrancy to Dunedin. So we shouldn't forget that as we make these practical decisions.
Thank you. And on that note, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, one and all. I declare the meeting closed. Well done. We've been 10 to 2.